TNCRadio.LIVE, your commercial driver navigation station.
Good afternoon. This is TNCRadio.LIVE, and this is the Truckers Network Radio Show with your host, Shelley Johnson.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. Yes, this is the Truckers Network Radio Show on TNCRadio.LIVE, where we offer the entertainment, sports, weather, traffic, and news that commercial drivers want to hear. You know, good health is something many drivers strive to achieve, but a lifestyle on the road makes it really tough to get that kind of a result. Today, we have an holistic physician who specializes in natural health, healing, disease prevention, and holistic health care. Dr. Erica Steele is a board-certified naturopathic physician, doctor of natural medicine, and a certified homeoprophylaxis practitioner. She's worked with professional drivers, and she knows the obstacles to good health that they face. Welcome, Dr. Steele. Some of those words are huge. I'm going to have to explore exactly what they mean here.
Yes. Well, quite simply, I say it like this. I have 6 degrees in my field. I've been in practice 19, almost 20 years. And I've treated over 30,000 patients. And so the all of the little letters and numbers and, configurations really don't matter when it comes down to it. But at the end of the day, I'm very experienced and I've worked with so many people, just like your listeners.
Excellent. So I guess we could start with what's holistic healthcare? How does it differ from conventional healthcare?
So conventional healthcare, what they do is they segment the body and they segment the mind. So your traditional medical doctor, they're known as allopathic doctors. And what they do is you'll go in for a symptom and then they're just focused on that symptom. And so they'll diagnose, they'll label the symptom, a diagnosis, and then they'll manage that symptom, oftentimes using a pharmaceutical or procedure if one is available, or a surgical intervention. And so it's a very narrow scope that they operate in. Whereas in holistic healthcare, we really look at the relationship that all parts have. So if a person comes in with a symptom, let's say they have a skin issue, for instance, we know that the skin is an expressive organ system. And so we have to look at the internal organs. We have to look at the liver, the small intestines. We look at the relationship that the intestines have to, let's say, the immune system. And then, of course, the skin as a whole. So, and not only that, we're also looking at human behavior. So we're looking at how the patient's motivations are, their mental state, their emotional state. And we're putting all of those pieces together to create a very practical, result-driven approach. We are very data-centric, so everything is measured based off of the laboratory of the patient. We're trained more extensively in biochemistry and laboratory diagnostics. So we're like the medical detectives. We're trained to look for and find all the clues and then put those clues together to create a puzzle. And then we interpret that in a step-by-step actionable approach to the patient.
I really like that. Now, you're naturopathic. So Are you more open to prescribing things besides pharmaceuticals, which a lot of conventional doctors do?
Yeah, in fact, we don't prescribe pharmaceuticals at all. That's actually not a part of our practice. And the reason being is when Dr. Benedict Lust, our founder, came from Germany, where my practice is normally out of Germany, and it came to America in the 1940s, he believed in several principles. The body could heal itself, that, doctor is teacher, prevention is, worth a pound of cure, also about finding the cause, and then also looking to nature. So looking at natural substances and getting away from the synthetics. Now, I'm also trained in integrative medicine, so I do work hand in hand with allopathic doctors, but I also am like a check and balance as well. Because a check and balance in between them and the patient, because oftentimes in allopathy, they're trained sometimes in very aggressive approaches. And again, they're very focused on one area. So they may say, oh, we want to put, XYZ pharmaceutical on the patient or in the patient, but they're not taking into consideration they're going to get a short-term gain, but what long-term impact is that going to have on the system? And so we look at all of that. We're trained to identify the nutrients that are deficient in the body and increase that either through diet, lifestyle changes, and supplementation, which we do use pharmaceutical grade supplements. But we're also trained to look for and identify the toxins that are in the system, from the air we breathe to the water to even our food supply, is very, very toxic. So we're seeing those toxins accumulate in the body. So decreased nutrients and increased toxins actually bring the body out of balance, and then in turn create disease process. So much more complex than just come in, tell me what's wrong, and I'll give you a pill.
Sure.
We're not in that camp for sure. Not that I'm opposed, but some people, they don't want to take personal responsibility with their health, and they want, or they need to use it as a stabilizer as well in the meantime.
Now, do you find all this out with blood work? Is that how you identify?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We look at blood, stool, serum, plasma, urine, hair, just depending on what I'm looking at. So
hair samples, interesting.
Okay. Yeah. We look at heavy metals and things like that, minerals with that. But we look at a basic blood panel as like a check engine light for the body. So, we look at all the metabolic health of the system, and then we take it from there. It's a good jumping off point. So that we start to look at, and a lot of people don't realize you have to stage the body, meaning you have to get the body to a good point to get accurate lab results. People just kind of assume, well, I go in and I get labs drawn and then that's it. Well, the body has to have enough energy to keep up homeostasis, which is balance, but also to express itself in the lab panel as well. And then the other thing I should mention is allopathic doctors are only trained in disease process. So if you go to the allopathic doctor with your lab and they say, oh, everything looks good, and, we'll see you in a year, right, they're looking at it from terms of disease process. So they're not looking at it in terms of health because they're not trained in health.
Which is interesting, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. So it's like, okay, we'll see you when you're sicker, and then we'll get on it. So we're more trained in prevention, so we actually can prevent things truly before they become a disease, which is what we want to work toward.
Okay, so basically, what you would be looking for in a lab is maybe something that's elevated that you can see could be going in the wrong direction, whereas maybe another doctor would not necessarily consider that out of range. Am I correct?
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. So let's take a glucose, for instance. So healthy glucose is between 80 and 85. Let's say you go in, your glucose is like 90, 95, 100. Your medical doctor is going to say, oh, your glucose looks good. Everything's fine, because technically it's not considered in that pre-diabetic state until either over 100 or up to 120. Right. And so they'll say, oh, everything looks good. Whereas I catch a patient, I go, oh, wait, it's at 90. Let's watch your protein. Let's increase your protein. Let's get that glucose number down, because we want to keep it, within range. So our ranges are different. Their ranges are more broad, and our ranges are very specific, because our ranges are looking at optimization of health, not just diagnosing and managing diseases.
Which is ideal, because then you're going to feel better. That just makes sense, rather than going to the doctor saying, man, I feel like crap. That's not what you want to prevent that.
Yeah. Or sadly, what a lot of times people will do is they feel like crap, and they go to the doctor and they run labs, and the doctor says, everything looks fine in your labs. We don't know what's wrong. And that can be very crazy making to the patient, because they go to this doctor, that doctor, they don't feel well, but they're going in, and all the medical doctors are telling them that the labs look fine. And so then what it does is it creates distrust, number one, in the healthcare community. And number two, it drives patients to Google University, and now they're becoming their own healthcare advocate. Now they're researching. Now they're trying, everything known to man, that they can find, to not only figure out what's wrong, but also treat themselves, which now opens up a whole nother avenue, of danger really for public health. So,
Sure it will.
yeah, it's definitely, it's sad, but that's also why, part of why I do what I do is to educate people about their health. And I find that people coming in, they're really thirsty for that information. They want to know what to do. They want to understand their labs. They want to prevent it. They want to take personal responsibility. But if they don't have the numbers or they don't have the data to do so, they can't really make decisions. The other piece is that as a doctor, it's not our job to make those choices for the patient. It's our job to be an objective interpreter of the data and then provide that information and provide pros and cons, benefit versus risk, and options to the patient. And then ultimately the patient makes that choice themselves, not necessarily I look at everything. And even if I have a belief, now I impose that educated opinion onto the patient. And now I force or try to coerce or try to, and we see a lot of that, unfortunately, in healthcare, especially today, where there's just a lot of pressure to do things that sometimes patients just aren't compelled to do. And we have to really take a step back and go, okay, I respect your decision. This is my opinion. However, this is what the data is. And it's more of a partnership and a relationship rather than this kind of totalitarian state that I think sometimes healthcare becomes.
Oh, yes, it really does. You really can feel like you're being really ruled over by a doctor. And a lot of times it feels like they're not listening to you. And I feel like you listen to the patient. It's it's a skill. And believe it or not, I've actually a trained listener. I've spent years training, believe it or not, in listening, because you really have to, when you're listening to somebody, there's a few things that happen. Number one, you have to take yourself out of the equation. Number two, you have to take out what you think you know. Like, I don't even look at my charts before I meet with my patients at first, because I don't want to walk in the door already having a preconceived notion of who this person is. Right. I want to meet them as they are. And then I'm listening from a space of compassion, empathy, but I'm also listening from a space as a medical detective, listening for clues. And then working to gain their trust and empathize with them and be compassionate, while also understanding the vastness of what they have going on. Because just the practice of validating somebody and them being fully heard and fully seen in and of itself is powerful healing. And then from there, we can go into all of the nuances of this lab test and that lab test, because the other challenge is that, as I mentioned with my education, I've spent a lot of time in biochemistry and laboratory and all this stuff. So, all those big words are very easy for me. Average person, no idea what half the stuff is. So my job is to take these super complex concepts and break it down into very simple, palatable, understandable nuggets of wisdom that then the patient can take with them and then be inspired and motivated to take action in their life. So it's pretty cool. That's why I love being a teacher so much. That makes so much sense. And they can relate to what you're saying. You're able to explain it, so it makes sense. So yes, then they be motivated. It's like, okay, that's what I have to do. That makes sense, rather than sitting there and basically listening to the doctor. And it sounds like, Charlie Brown's parents going, wah, 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 because really,
exactly. And most of us have a rebellious nature anyway, I know myself included. So it doesn't often work if you just tell somebody what they have to do. I'm a product of two Marines, right? So even though I love structure now as an adult, when I was a teenager, forget about it, right?
Yeah, I bet.
And each one of us has that little hidden rebellious teen in there that sure. Like as soon as you say don't eat sugar, they're like, psh, that's the first thing I want to go do, right? And it's not, and it's no fault to their own. And so oftentimes in my practice, I don't tell people no. I say, you know what, you can choose whatever you want to choose, but remember, there's a cause and effect of that. So, whatever you're choosing, that choice that you're making, you're going to experience the impact of that. And I find that it takes the shame, the blame, all the beating people up. It takes all that out of the equation. And then they actually get to experience, oh, you know what? Yeah, when I do eat sugar, I don't really feel that great. And wow, I'm really kind of experiencing what it feels like to be fully present in my body again, and how it feels when I'm taking care of my body versus how I'm not taking care of my body. And I'll tell you, that is the greatest motivation ever, when you can feel that distinction.
Absolutely. And that's what a lot of our driver listeners are looking for. We need to go to break here, and there's so much more information I want to cover here. And I know that Tom has questions for you, Dr. Steele, as well. We're talking to Dr. Erica Steele here on the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.LIVE. Definitely stay tuned for more. There's some great information, some new perspectives, and a road to good health coming up right here on TNCRadio.LIVE.
This infoblog on TNCRadio.live is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. 6 things to consider before starting your career in trucking. Truck drivers are often referred to as the backbone of America. They haul roughly 70% of America's freight. Nearly every good consumed in the United States has been shipped by a truck. Right now, the demand for truck drivers is higher than ever. The growing truck driver shortage in America is a topic of concern and has been for the past 4 years. The United States is in dire need of people to start driving trucks. Are you considering becoming a truck driver, but not quite sure if it's the career path for you? Here are 6 things potential truck drivers need to know before starting their career in the trucking industry. Know your why. Why do I want to become a truck driver? Is one of the first questions you should ask yourself before starting your career in trucking. Knowing and understanding your why is important so that you make sure that trucking is something you'll enjoy. Nothing is more draining than working in a career field that you're not passionate about and excited about. Truck drivers are already more likely to struggle with mental health problems because of the trucking lifestyle. So to avoid dreading your trucking career, ask yourself, why do I want to be a truck driver? Long work hours. It's obvious that truck drivers spend a majority of their workday in the driver's seat, but many new drivers don't realize how hard it can be sitting for long periods. Drivers spend hours upon hours sitting down. This can result in leg, back, and neck pain. If you're the type of person who cannot handle sitting down for several hours at a time, then truck driving's not for you. Another thing to consider is how long a typical workday is for a truck driver. Drivers are legally allowed to work 14 hours a day, but are limited to 11 hours of driving time. They must take a mandatory 30-minute break by the 8th hour of duty. Following the long workday, drivers must have 10 hours of off-duty time. In a work week, drivers cannot exceed more than 60 hours of work or 70 hours over 8 days. Failure to follow these HOS rules can result in being shut down, fines, and lower carrier safety ratings. A new lifestyle. There's not a career quite like trucking. It's nothing like your typical 9-to-5 Monday through Friday job. It's long hours, days, and most times weeks away from home. Truck drivers often experience loneliness, depression, and anxiety. If you're someone who's used to working with many people, then truck driving will be a shock. Drivers will go days or weeks without seeing their loved ones, and it can really take a toll on truckers, especially those who are new. Adjusting to this lifestyle can be challenging at first, but once you do, you can live a rewarding life as a truck driver. Getting seat time. The more experience you have as a truck driver, the better. With more experience, you'll land better truck driving jobs and better pay. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, truck drivers earn an average of over $40,000 a year. Yet, many trucking companies advertise higher rates of pay for experienced drivers. Over time, you can negotiate a higher rate per mile. Your relationships will suffer. It doesn't matter if you're on the road or at home. Make time for family. Make it a priority to talk to someone in your family once a day. It can be tough for truckers, especially long-haul truck drivers, to maintain relationships with their families due to the trucking lifestyle. Keeping in contact with your loved ones will help life on the road be less lonely. Lack of sleep. Getting the recommended amount of sleep each night is a rare thing for truckers. Although sleep may be difficult for truckers because of the uncomfortable way of living, it's essential to their well-being and safety. Make it a priority to get good sleep and make a sleep schedule. Set an alarm for a certain time and turn off all electronics and get your much-needed sleep. Not getting enough sleep makes life on the road miserable. Although there may seem like many downsides, truck driving can be a very rewarding and exciting career. As a truck driver, you have freedom on the open road and the chance to see America's most beautiful places. For information on trucking, be sure to check out the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
This is a very special shout out to all our truckers. From Starcom Racing's Quinn Hoff on TNCRadio.LIVE.
I just wanted to give a special shout out to all the truckers out there listening. There's a lot of storms out there. Just stay safe. And I appreciate everything they do for our country. Like I said, that I don't know if you guys heard earlier, without trucks, America stops moving. And I know that well myself, coming from a family trucking business. And, obviously everyone needs truck drivers. So if you need a truck driving position, be sure to check out Health Transfer. And I appreciate you.
You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.LIVE. I'm Shelley Johnson here with Tom Kirk. We're talking with Dr. Erica Steele, who's a board-certified naturopathic doctor. Dr. Steele, in our first segment, we got into what you do differently to care for patients, which is really compelling. As a matter of fact, I wish you were my doctor. You actually listen, too. That's so cool.
I know, it's rare.
I wanted to get into some specific questions that our drivers might have. So I thought I'd defer to you, Tom, because you're a driver. What questions do you have for Dr. Steele?
Well, let's start off with probably one of the most basic questions that drivers have is, I want to get healthy. I want to start seeing a doctor more, but I can never figure out how to get a doctor's schedule with the way most healthcare practices are booked weeks and months in advance. And they're like, well, here's your appointment, not understanding how our schedules change and things like that. Or they're like, well, okay, we did this. Now you need to come back in 5 days. I won't be here in 5 days. Well, you have to be back in 5 days. You don't understand. I will probably be on the other side of the country in 5 days. And how do you communicate that to a doctor? How do you find a doctor that will work with you and your schedule, particularly if you're trying to get healthy?
That's a very easy answer. You're looking at a concierge doctor, a private doctor. So I myself am a private doctor. I'm a concierge doctor. So patients pay me an annual fee to pretty much be their private doctor. So they have access to me via cell phone and email, et cetera, because I work with a lot of professionals and who don't necessarily have the easiest of schedules. Now, if you're trying to stick to the insurance model, that makes it really tough because the insurance model is very restrictive. In that case, you're probably more so looking at like these doc in the box kind of places that you can kind of go in, and they're more of a national network, more of like here we have a Velocity or a Patient First. But those you're not necessarily going to get as quality of care and somebody that's going to follow you through your case. Like for me, I work with patients all over the world. And so when I send lab orders, I can send to any lab core anywhere in the country. And then when I'm reviewing labs, I can do it through the telephone, through Zoom, et cetera. And there's also a lot more because of COVID, there's a lot more doctors that are going on to doing telehealth models and things like that. Whether they want to do it where, they're flexible with their schedule, that's a whole nother thing. For me, I work till 8 o'clock at night, sometimes 8, 9 o'clock at night. And then I also work, one Saturday a month too. And then when a patient comes in, I already know kind of where they're at with their schedule. And so we make something that it works and accommodates. Now, I would say before you even book that appointment, I would call the provider's office and say, look, my schedule's unpredictable. I really want to work with somebody. Is this a possibility? Let me speak to the doctor, or let me speak to the nurse, and let me kind of lay this out. And just before you even waste your time or energy, or even copay if you're choosing to go the insurance route. I think getting out from underneath insurance, we have a lot more flexibility to be able to practice how we want to practice, which is also one of the reasons why I did that.
I wanted to interject a quick question here on the insurance. Is there any chance that the insurance industry is going to change so that it opens up for more comprehensive care like you're providing? Because it is true. It seems like a lot of the doctors today, they're not available and they only have a certain amount of time and everything else.
Well, insurance really wasn't set up for preventative care. Okay. Originally insurance was set up for catastrophic emergency. So,
right.
if you, God forbid something happens and it's between getting a life-saving procedure, surgery, or losing your house, you have something to catch you. It's like your car, right? So, I have Geico as my car insurance, and I don't call Geico and say, hey, it's time for my oil change. Can you go pick that up for me? Hey, I need to get new tires. I picked these out for you. Can you reimburse me? Right. So our mindset around the purpose of health insurance actually is flawed, unfortunately. Okay. You have to invest in your health. Now, we do have things like HSA and FSA accounts, which are health spending or flex saving accounts, which those are specific pre-tax accounts that are set up to pay for things that your insurance doesn't cover. Whereas like most standard labs are covered under insurance pretty easy, but there's some other additional costs that like your copays and things like that are not covered. So, and with insurance, you've got so many people bombarding the system with so many health needs. And so it really limits the amount of treatment that the patient can provide. So you are condensed to that 15-minute in and out appointment, only one thing at a time you can focus on because you just don't have time. And really, it's just not conducive to be sitting down, listening, taking adequate case information, creating care plans, et cetera, because we still have to chart. It's not, somewhere has to give. And so that's why I said, this just isn't going to work for comprehensive care. Now, for ER care, it's beautiful. It works great. But for chronic care and real comprehensive health care, it's just not feasible.
Makes sense. Sorry for the interruption there, Tom. Go ahead with the rest of your questions here.
Not a problem. And I think you've covered it, but just to kind of put it in a really short 2 or 3 sentences, what's the difference between concierge and traditional care?
So concierge is I'm paying you as a doctor, right, a fee, and you are my private doctor, and you gain access to that doctor. So pretty much I work for all my patients. I don't work for the insurance company. I work for them. So if you have a question, if you send me a message, like I have a patient right now who's in the hospital, unfortunately, and I called her on a Sunday and helped ease her concerns, right? Because I am a private doctor, I have that flexibility to do that. Patients text me, if they have a question. Whereas your traditional doctor, you're going to go into the office. You don't have access to them email. You sometimes you have access to messaging, but they're going to respond to you when they are able to, not necessarily because there's some sense of urgency, because their employer actually is the insurance company. It's not you, because that's the one who's paying them.
And that makes perfect sense. And actually, for me, I have found a more traditional doctor that uses the concierge system, and I use that for a lot of my things. And just because I've moved parts of the country, I'm getting ready to probably switch to another concierge service, just because I found it to be more convenient, and the fact that telehealth is included. So that's exactly my situation there. Another thing that I've noticed happening lately, both with myself and a lot of other drivers, is there seems to be an increase on urinary tract infections among male drivers and prostate infections along with them. and they're just so much fun to have out here on the road.
No, I bet. I know. It's all about gut health. Yeah, it's all about gut health.
So what would you suggest, just as a general suggestion for drivers who are dealing with some of this? Because obviously if you have a bad flare-up, you're probably going to have to end up on antibiotics. But what would you just suggest generally to drivers, to help with that on the whole?
Yeah, generally. So preventative, and also if it's really bad, you would do a D-mannose, probably like a 500 milligram D-mannose along with a probiotic, and the probiotic would be like a lactobacillus and a bifidobacterium. And the reason that is because you don't have enough healthy bacteria within the small intestines. And so it's creating more issues within the urinary bladder. And so those microorganisms aren't quite balanced within there. So all diseases, again, begin in the gut. Once you put an antibiotic in, it's like a bomb to all of your microbes, and you have to rebuild that. And so definitely preventative, doing some probiotics, just the lactobacillus and the bifidobacterium, a D-mannose, and then a little bit of yarrow, because yarrow actually, and of course cranberry, there's yarrow cranberry blends that are really good. Herbs, etc. has a great cran relief, I think is what it's called. It's a retail product. You can buy it in the store. And I just love, yarrow has a very soothing component to the urinary tract. So that can also help with irritation from the bacterial infections.
And what is D-mannose? Because I don't think I've ever heard of that before.
Yeah, I think it's a sugar. I think it's actually a form of sugar. It's not like a traditional sugar, but I think it kind of has a sweet component to it. And it definitely helps with some of the pH levels and helps with some of the infections, eating up some of the infection. I use it a lot. It works really well.
Thanks a lot. That really does help a lot. That will probably help a lot of drivers out there who deal with this on a regular basis. One of the other things that I know that are preached to drivers, particularly those who have higher blood pressure issues, is stay away from salt, stay away from salt. Salt is evil, cut down on your salt, but then, and like all salt is the same. It doesn't matter, you just use the ordinary table salt because the pink salt is just more expensive, et cetera, et cetera. And I know myself and some others started at, asking some of these quote unquote experts questions. Well, wait a second, you have trace minerals in this and this. And if you ever really paste the two side by side, a lot of times the pink salt or the Hawaiian salt will taste a little saltier. It'll have a little bit of flavor where the other doesn't. It's like, it seems like I use less when I use that. Oh, no. It's all in your head. So when you kind of get people saying, I'm confused, what kind of salt I should use, because there's so many kinds out there. What really is the right kind of salt to use, or is there a right kind?
Yeah, I mean, I think the traditional salts are going to be more bleached. They've got a lot of toxins in them. They don't have any minerals in them. They're just kind of washed out. Whereas like your Himalayan pink salts, as well as there's other types of salts, but that's the most popular one to find. It has, I think it has 86 cations in it. So it's got a lot of mineral component to it. So it's not just the seasoning you're also remineralizing, which of course our food, unfortunately, because of how it's grown, et cetera, gets demineralized. So we don't have a lot of minerals in the soil that's being grown, and then it's sprayed and all kinds of other fun things. And so we definitely are minerally depleted, which of course is going to lend itself to exhaustion, depression, mood changes, et cetera. So putting that little bit of pink Himalayan sea salt on it can actually help assist remineralizing the body. I often, like kind of a poor man's electrolyte, if you will, is putting some pink Himalayan sea salt in some water and shaking that up. So if you're feeling faint or you're dehydrated, you're sweating a lot, that's also a really good pick-me-up as well.
So that's better than Gatorade or something like that then?
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, Gatorade has a lot of artificial colors and dyes in it, which are very neuroreactive. So we want to stay away from the colors and the dyes. Those are no good for the system.
How about sea salt? Is that as good as Himalayan? Okay.
I don't know, but I would say in the tiers of salt, I would say that sea salt is probably just below that pink Himalayan sea salt. I think the pink Himalayan has more mineral compound to it than the actual sea salt. But sea salt, anything from the sea, has tons of wonderful benefits, a lot of minerals in it. I just think there's a distinction between the pink and the sea salt. It's, I would have studied my salts before coming on the show if I thought I was going to be quizzed on it. But I do think there's a distinction on it. No, we're good. I do think there is a small distinction between the pink Himalayan versus the sea salt.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, part of the distinction is because Himalayan pink salt is mined. There tends to be fewer impurities in it, and by impurities, I mean toxins, heavy metals, etc., than sea salt that would be collected and done from salt water. Because when you evaporate seawater to do salt, whatever's in that water is now theoretically in the salt.
That makes sense.
Yeah, of course. I love it.
Former geology major / nerd.
That helps it. I was kind of hoping you'd answer that question, Tom. I'm thinking, okay, I bet you he knows this answer here.
I mean, that's the overly simplistic answer, but we'll go with the simple one for now. At least that's the theory behind it. And sometimes theory and practice is a couple different things, but that's the simple one.
Sure.
Hey, Shelley, how much longer do we have before our next break?
We have about a minute, but I could maybe have us go back to break, and we could discuss what we're going to be discussing when we come back, because there's so much information here, and I want to be able to cover as many bases as we can, and certainly inspire the drivers to maybe get a second opinion about their health and give them some guidance on what they need to do. This is really, really important to stay healthy on the road. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show here on TNCRadio.LIVE. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kirk. We're talking with Dr. Erica Steele, a board-certified naturopathic doctor who has a lot of information. I'm finding this fascinating, and I think I might even get motivated to do some things healthy after I get off the air here. You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. Stay tuned for more coming up.
On May 20th, NOAA issued its 2021 Seasonal Hurricane Outlook for the Atlantic and Eastern Pacific basins. For the Atlantic, an active hurricane season is predicted. Here at NOAA, we're predicting a 60% chance that the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season will be above normal. There is a 30% chance of the season being near normal and a 10% chance of it being below normal. Several climate factors that are conducive to increased hurricane activity, including the ongoing high activity era that has been in place since 1995, are reflected in this year's outlook. We're now experiencing ENSO-neutral conditions with the possibility of a return to La Niña later in the hurricane season. In addition, warmer than average sea surface temperatures in the tropical Atlantic Ocean and Caribbean Sea, reduced vertical wind shear, weaker tropical Atlantic trade winds, and an enhanced West African monsoon all contribute to the outlook for this season's above-normal activity. Each year, it is important to be prepared for the hurricane season ahead, and 2021 is no different. As we know, it takes just one storm to impact a community and cause significant damage from high winds, storm surge, and flooding. NOAA works closely with our partners to help emergency managers and communities make targeted decisions to support public safety. Millions of people in the U.S. live in areas that could be impacted by a hurricane, and only a fraction of those live along the immediate coast. Now is the time to get prepared. Visit the National Hurricane Center's website at hurricanes.gov throughout the season to stay on top of any watches and warnings. Be sure to visit FEMA's website, ready.gov, for additional hurricane preparedness tips. Hurricane preparation starts at home. Start today, and together we can build a more weather-ready nation.
Want to advertise on TNCRadio.LIVE? Take advantage of great discounts for 2021. Check out the sponsors page at TNCRadio.LIVE or send email to info@TNCRadio.LIVE.
You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.LIVE. I'm Shelley Johnson here with Tom Kirk, and we're talking with Dr. Erica Steele, a board-certified naturopathic doctor who has a tremendous amount of knowledge and information. You know, Dr. Steele, I was thinking you were talking about gut health, and you hear a lot about that, certainly with probiotics and all of that. But a lot of times you're hearing avoid gluten. Is gluten like this really bad, evil thing that we're supposed to avoid? Because, I mean, didn't humans kind of grow up on gluten?
Well, gluten's a wheat protein, and what they've done is they put it in a lot of things, and so our bodies really weren't made to get little concentrations of a lot of different things. The other thing we're seeing in the genetics is that a lot of people are under methylators, which means that they're not able to clear the toxins from the gluten. And so it can create a pro-inflammatory response. And so, you know, there's varying degrees. So there's obviously the celiac, which is, you know, anaphylactic allergy, but a lot of people are having more sensitivities and intolerances. You would know that if you eat something that has gluten in it and then you're bloated afterwards, like you kind of have a gluten baby, that lets you know that the body isn't processing it well, meaning the liver's not processing it well. And so it's creating this unhealthy bacteria and inflammatory process in the small intestines. It can actually do damage. Like sometimes it acts as sandpaper in different parts of the small intestines, which can inhibit nutrient assimilation. So you definitely want to be mindful with gluten. You know, this is more of a laboratory thing. If you see somebody, if they're like MCH, MCV, those numbers in their CBC panel, which is their immune panel, are constantly going low, or they're anemic, something like that, that means that you want to stay away from gluten, because more than likely you're an undermethylator. You would know if you're an undermethylator if you have the MTHFR variant, which you can do through, a salivary test.
Oh, interesting. MTHR?
MTHFR. MTHFR.
Oh.
Yeah, it helps with B12 and folate metabolism.
Interesting.
And a follow-up question kind of goes along with this. There's various driver health groups now that are really starting to talk about and promote fatty liver disease, fatty liver syndromes, and the products that go along with that. So what is it? And what should drivers know about it? And are some of these quote unquote liver treats that you hear about or things like that, are they good? Or are you better off, for example, drinking dandelion tea?
Yeah. So the first thing with the liver, it all comes down to metabolism and detoxification. So you have to have enough nutrition running through, right? And so in order to push toxins through the liver, you're going to need high amounts of protein. So a lot of times people are eating too many fats, which then what happens is the gallbladder can't keep up with the bile production with the liver. And so it slows down that production. That's why a lot of people, they'll have gallstones and then eventually have their gallbladders taken out, but that doesn't fix the problem. You really want to look at your macronutrients, which are your balance of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, and really work towards a high protein, lower fat diet to really help take the pressure off of the liver. And that's really the way out. Now, there are some things that can be helpful. I would say they're a little more on the anecdotal side, mostly because you're looking at, dosing on it. You're looking at concentration. I mean, dandelion root tea is great, but it's, not the be all end all. Same thing with milk thistle, not the be all end all, because we're at the point now where our environment is just so toxic, from the air, the water, the food. And then as truckers, driving, you're constantly around exhaust fumes all day long. So ensuring that you're at least detoxifying your liver every, I would say 1 to 2 times a year, doing a really good liver detox. And when I say that, detoxification of the liver doesn't mean you're running to the bathroom. A lot of times people think detox, they think, I'm going to be running to the bathroom. And that's not healthy. If you're running to the bathroom while you're detoxing, then that means that you're not necessarily, something's not balanced. So that's why whenever I do detoxes, I look at the patient's lab work and then I balance it from there. But you definitely want to clean the liver out just because of everything that it's being bombarded with. But the first step is really getting the diet balanced. And even though, I hear everybody groaning, even though I'm not listening, but you have to track your food. If you don't track your food, you have no idea what your carbohydrates, proteins, and fat ratios. And it's so easy to eat high fat. And it's not this healthy fat versus non-healthy fat business. Fat is fat. Your liver looks at it similar. And so really getting that fat ratio down to about 20% of your total caloric intake is key. And then getting your protein levels up. So kind of rule of thumb, is like, a gram of protein per every pound. Now, of course, I'm a data girl, so I've got data for days, and I fine tune all this stuff down for people. But, for the most part, you really want to focus on high protein and low fat to help prevent liver. I just think it's a lot to do with toxicity in the liver and a lot to do with the diet, honestly.
Makes sense. What's a good source of protein, especially for drivers when they're on the road?
Oh my gosh, tuna packets are great. There's these Evolve protein shakes that are really great. Let's see, beef jerky is really great because it's low fat. Mm-hmm. Let me see some other things.
What about the incredible edible egg? Or is that more problematic?
The yolk has fat in it. So you could do a 2 white to 1 yolk ratio. So you could get the little double packs, right? And just throw out one of the yolks and you'd be fine. And then also too, they have these little cans of, and I know it's a can, grown again, but they have these cans of turkey that are really good, and you just have to rinse them. You can rinse them because it has sodium in it, but you rinse that, and that's like 15, 18 grams of protein, super low fat. So you're looking for like 15 to 18 upwards on the protein, and you're looking for no more than about 4 grams of fat on the nutrition label.
Okay.
That really does help a lot. And I don't know if we really have enough time to get into this, but you have a lot of drivers and once again, some various driver health advocates that are really pushing keto hard now. What are your thoughts on keto?
No, I mean, keto, it's okay, but keto is high fat, low carb. I don't know where the protein sits, but again, I think it really impacts the liver. Also too, when you're a truck driver, you're not going to be burning off all of that fat. So you're going to be sedentary. Now, it's a good kind of short-term gain, like you can drop weight really fast, but it's not sustainable over time. And you also have to check ketosis on a regular basis, which, how realistic is it? You're going to be, doing pee strips in the bathroom when you stop.
You would come on now. Surprised.
Oh, okay.
Because some of the people who do really encourage this coincidentally sell all the supplies that goes along with this.
Oh, now I'm getting it now. I'm understanding all of it now. Yeah.
But that said, some of those people, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm bashing anyone out there.
No.
They have seen some dramatic health changes in their life. They're huge advocates of naturopathic doctors, et cetera, et cetera. And so, and I will say, for some people, it may work and be right. It's just every time I've looked at it, I'm like, wait, if I have to be this precise on every little thing, I know me. Yeah. I don't have the time or the patience. And really the other thing is, and we've talked about this a little bit off air. Yeah. What are 2 or 3 simple things you suggest for drivers? Because particularly since COVID, with restaurants having been shut down or were completely shut down for a while, and a lot of drivers turning to chips and noodles and things like that because it's what we can find for food. What would you suggest for us trying to get healthier again? And if there is another emergency at some point in the future, what are some pantry items you think everyone should have in their truck or their home for emergencies?
Let's see, pantry items. So I'm not a prepper, so I don't know the emergency part, but I have a lot in and I'm happy to share. I have a lot of videos and stuff on this stuff. So if anybody gets in touch with me, I really I do rice cakes. I buy like literally boxes of the, protein shakes. The tuna packets are great.
So, Dr. Steele, we had a little technical issue there. Why didn't you pick up where you left off? Sorry about that.
Yeah. So as I was saying, the quick items that I've mentioned, like, rice cakes, tuna packets, protein bars are a little tricky because they tend to be higher fat, but I tend to do the protein shakes instead, like Evolve and Iconic. I think for truckers, going into a grocery store is going to be a much better bet than, let's say, pulling into a gas station. Although, if you search hard enough in a gas station, you can find some gems. But I also, nuts and all of those seeds and things like that, although they are a good source of protein, they are high in fat. So I definitely more into the grocery store than into the truck stop. And then, more fresh whole foods rather than processed, canned in a box, in a bag, because usually those just have a lot of chemicals in them, which defeats the whole purpose.
Is there any way that maybe they could consult with you, or do they need to come in?
For sure. No, they can consult anywhere in the country. holisticfamilypracticeva.com is our website. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, Holistic Family Practice, as well as Dr. Erica Steele. My office telephone number is 757-685-4325. And I do consults over the phone as also through telehealth as well. And very, very available in the sense of understanding people's schedule and understanding people's life. So I'm flexible when it comes to things like that. This is wonderful because
you can assist in prevention and you actually listen. And I think the drivers really, they need that. And your accessibility is awesome.
Yeah. And somebody to teach, so it's not just talking at you, but it's listening and then, disseminating the information and then providing practical solutions. Like I was saying about reading the nutrition labels. And we have a really cool app, that we give all of our patients, our practice members. And I actually teach classes through the app. And so I send classes right through the app. So while they're driving, they could be listening to, how to meal plan, how to meal prep, et cetera. And I don't love to cook. I cook so that I don't die. And so I pretty much do like 5 ingredients or less, 20 minutes or less. Very lean and mean. Yeah, exactly.
We got to go. I'm so sorry. I want to bring you back, Dr. Erica Steele. You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. Stay tuned.
Thanks so much for listening to this podcast. For more information regarding our podcast, reuse, copyrights, etc., please visit our website, www.tncradio.live.